UFC 309, Stipe Miocic is gonna KO John Duck Jones. Now, for how this happens, and for all my other card predictions, stay tuned for the rest of the video. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and this is Masked MMA. Let's begin. Now, we're gonna get to how Stipe wins this, okay? Because I'm not expecting, okay, an easy fight, and nobody else is. Nobody else is, except for people who are picking John. However, I think that it's gonna play out a little bit different, and I'll get into that. But this is a full card predictions. So, with that being said, let's jump into it. Now, we have Veronica Hardy versus Eduarda Mora. Now, with this one, I've been noticing with Veronica Hardy, um, similar to what other prominent YouTubers in the MMA sphere have been saying about Veronica Hardy, I've been noticing that her level has kind of peaked. I think that she, in her last three fights, maybe it was two, but in her last three fights, they were all like close 29-28. And it kind of showed. I actually thought that she would lose to J.J. Aldrich. I believe that was her last opponent, yes. And I thought that J.J. Aldrich looked pretty good going into that fight, in all fairness. For a woman MMA strawweight, I thought she looked pretty good. But, I mean, I was wrong, and I think that the odds are quite fair. I do think that it'll be a decision for Veronica Hardy and probably a 29-28. I highly doubt a 30-27, seeing as looking at the weigh-ins, she and Veronica Hardy seem to be the smaller girl. So with that being said, or smaller woman, with that being said, I think that she'll probably win on the striking. Maybe she'll get taken down a little bit, but yeah, I just think that she's a little bit better than most of the woman that she's been facing these days, outside the rankings. And I think that with this one, she should actually get some ranked opposition, though I don't know if she'll be able to beat anyone ranked. So that's my prediction for that one. Moving swiftly on, we have Basil Hafez versus Oban Elliott. Now this one is a hard one for me, and there's actually quite a few hard ones for me on this card. Now with Oban Elliott, his striking really impressed me against Preston Parsons, I believe. Let me just double check there. Yes, Preston Parsons. And Basil Hafez, although against Mickey Gall, looked quite, 50-50. He looked kind like, let's be honest, the decision was kind of close, and I could have seen one or two of the judges scoring it to Mickey Gall, even though I had it for Basil Hafez only barely. I wouldn't have been surprised if they scored it to Mickey Gall. And with that being said, I think that, you know, Basil Hafez's chance right here is landing big punches that rock Oban Elliott, kind of like what Val Woodburn did to Oban Elliott in his first UFC fight. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go with a decision for Elliott, but again, another close one. I could totally see Basil Hafez winning rounds off of big shots or knockdowns, or maybe he just gets top pressure and secures rounds off of control time, even though I don't think control time should be scored very much. And moving on from that, we have Mickey Gall versus Ramiz Brahma. Ramiz Brahmaj. Yeah, I don't know. Mickey Gall versus Ramiz Brahmaj. Yeah, I mean the name is not really. I'm not really good at saying these names. Pronunciation is not my forte. Um, I don't even know if forte is the right word, but you get what I'm saying. And with this one, it's I actually kind of see why Gall's the favorite, and I think that the UFC's or Tapology's predictions make sense to me as well. It makes sense to me that the younger, less losses as of recent, slightly better record, Ramiz is slightly more picked, but I'm actually going to go with Mickey Gall. The biggest issue for Mickey Gall is going to be if he could get taken down. That's the biggest issue. If he could get taken down and controlled for a I would say about maybe half of a round would probably make him lose a round in the judge's eyes. So if he could get taken down for like half the round or so in two of the three rounds, then that would be an issue for him because the judges are probably going to score control time, even though that's not what most judges should look at. He's probably just going to land enough pitter-pat shots to keep him on the ground if he does that, if he's successful in taking Mickey Gall down. But I don't see that. I think that he looked quite impressive against Basil Hafez, right? And, even though it was unanimous decision, he clearly lost one of the three rounds, and another one of them was pretty close. And even the one that was clear to Basil Hafez, I believe it was the first round, he still kept it decently competitive. So in all three of the rounds, I see Mickey Gall probably outstriking him, but maybe losing one of the rounds due to ground control. So that one is most likely to be a 30-27, though I don't know for certain. And then lots of decisions, but this one, I mean, it could be a finish. It could be a submission to Tabura or a knockout to Denise. But I actually think that, wow, a lot of people are actually picking this one. How many people are picking this one? Actually, no. More people are picking this fight. I noticed that on Typology, 4,000 people, 4,000 unique predictions, as you can see, just above the percentage. Yeah, I was surprised by that. I'm actually going to go against the 83% for KO from Denise. I'm going to go with a decision. Now, I am going to be the biggest glazer for Janata Denise right now. I'm going to be the biggest glazer. I think that he's going to be a world title challenger in the future. Now, I know that most people are going to say, "Oh, well, why would you pick him by decision then if you think that he's going to like clearly destroy Marcin Tabura?" Now, I don't actually think that he's going to destroy Marcin Tabura, okay? I think that Marcin Tabura, that name I could get quite well, but against Marcin Tybura, I don't think that he's gone up against such a experienced grappler in Marcin Tybura, right? And I think that that's going to cause him some issues. Now, going ahead in the division, I think that he's going to be like top five strikers, genuinely. And I think that that's the reason why I think I see a title challenger in him, because I think that they're going to pick out the right opponents for him. They're probably going to give him like a Spivak next, or like maybe a Rosenstrike, Jairzinho Rosenstrike, coming off of a loss against Sergey Pavlovich, which them two are fighting in Saudi Arabia, I think, or UAE, one of those places. And so I think that they're gonna give Janata Denise good opposition in the rankings because he's already looked crazy good in my opinion. Now people are gonna critique him for the Carl Williams and the Austin Lane fights, but against Austin Lane, I rewatched it quite a few times. And for me, he honestly looked like he was just kind of. I know people are going to say, oh, well, he got dominated in the first round. And yes, he did. But it was clear to me that he was just. It's like what Dominic Cruz said in the Conor McGregor versus Habib 229 fight. He was gassing out Khabib by getting beaten up, and it's not like quite as bad as that, okay? But it was kind of like that, okay? It's not like he was like of course, like Austin Lane was doing a good job keeping him down, and there wasn't a whole lot that he could have done there. I get that. However, you see in the second round he was gassing, and then he was chewing up the legs. I'm talking about Austin Lane. He was gassing, and then Denise was chewing up the legs a little bit, and then he knew that he could go for the head hunting, right? And then it was just a matter of time, really, and you could just see that the reactions were delayed, and the entries were terrible for Austin Lane. And I also picked Janata Denise against Derek Lewis, right? And lo and behold, Derek Lewis probably would have lost that one because we don't know what happened in that one, but we can assume that it was some sort of injury or sickness that he just last minute pulled out for. Because, and I was right to pick him, I think. And I think that this is a pretty good underdog, right? You look at the Carl Williams fight, okay? Carl Williams, I think that he was super underrated there. Um, look, he got taken down in the third round, but I rewatched that as well. He was doing insane in the first two rounds, and he was showing composure. And this is what I like most about him in Austin Lane and Carl Williams fights. Okay, it's not about the record. It's not about the level of opposition. It's the fact that he's staying patient. Okay, he went to a decision with Carl Williams knowing that he didn't need the finish. In the third round, he kind of went for it at a few moments, but he was able to stall out the rounds when he gotten taken down in both fights. Okay, and then he was landing enough kicks to get two, and one judge even gave it three, I believe. And I wouldn't blame a third. I think a 30-27 is completely justified in the Carl Williams fight as well. So you know the reach is there. The height is barely there, although in the weigh-ins they looked about the same height. I think that Denise, with the kickboxing experience, with the patience, I think he's going to get taken down in one of the rounds, similar to the Carl Williams fight, but I think that he's going to win at least two of the rounds. And I think that he could even drop Marcin Tybura late in one of the rounds, but it won't be enough for him to get the KO, and they will move to the stool or the decision, and the win will go to Denise. I think this is a great underdog, although, you know, it's not an underdog in the Tapology fans' eyes because 62% to 38 is not necessarily an underdog in that department. But yeah, I'm gonna glaze until he loses, which hopefully isn't uh, tomorrow. We'll see how that goes. I mean, I'll still glaze him, I think. I mean, maybe not glaze, but I'll still praise, I'll still praise the composure because I think that that's super underrated and nobody's really talking about that. I think the composure is a great from Denise, and I think that he's a great striker to look out for, truly. So, four decisions in a row. Let's see if this will change with Onama and Roberto Romero. See, these are good names to pronounce. These are easier names to pronounce. Now, minus 900 favorite. Yeah, I mean, this is a complete mismatch in my opinion. I'm thinking probably a round one KO from Onama, right? He's shown some really good grappling against JSP. Funny that it was his nickname is so sort of like his nickname is a play on George St. Pierre, And I mean, granted, it was decision, and then he has a few KOs, right? Against lesser opposition. I wouldn't say lesser than Roberto though. Like, I mean, this guy. But my point is, when I say lesser opposition, like lesser than like what he should be fighting. I think at this point, um, David Onama has proven himself, right? I don't really know why this fight is happening aside from the fact that maybe the UFC staff see something that I don't in Roberto Romero. Maybe they just want to line up Onama with a crazy good finish. They want this card to, on paper, look trash. That's usually what these Madison Square Garden cards have been lately. They've on paper looked trash, but then they play out really good. Similar to the one with Yuri Prohaska, Sergey Pavlovich, Alex Pereira, Tom Aspinall. That one had a lot of lackluster fights on the card as far as names and ranked opposition, but it played out very well. So, lots of finishes and all that, exciting fights. And ultimately, this comes down to the fact that Onama is very precise. He has crazy scrambles on the ground. You saw that against JSP, um, Jonathan Pierce. Although he kind of got exposed against Pat Sabatini is pretty good on the ground. Now, he wasn't able to show that against Diego Lopez. I don't know how I almost forgot that, but the name Diego Lopez. I don't know how I forgot the name. Almost forgot the name Diego Lopez, but that's besides the point. He didn't get to show that grappling, right? Pat Sabatini, but then against Jonathan Pierce, he kind of exposed him. But I mean, for a striker like David Onama to kind of just I mean, I personally thought that Jonathan Pierce won that, but that's besides the point, okay? Most people are going to disagree with me here, but the point is his ability to scramble, and, he looked really good on the ground. So if Roberto Romero somehow shows some good, really good jiu-jitsu, right? Onama has the strength. I don't know how, but he has, I guess, because he's a big featherweight, right? He has some really strong um, athleticism for a featherweight. So yeah, I think if he gets taken to the ground, he'll be patient and he'll get a late first round KO. Similar to another guy on the main card soon enough. But yeah, first KO on the card there. Jim Miller, Damon Jackson. Now this one, I'm actually surprised by how many people are picking a decision here. I know that Damon Jackson, listen, I know that Damon Jackson is a really underrated striker, right? He's only gotten KO'd by Dan Ige and Ilia Topuria, whom have insane knockout power. It's them two and Josh Emmett that are those like compact, like one punch KO boxer types. And with Jim Miller, he kind of fits that style. Now, the going up in weight for Damon Jackson will play a role in this, and I wonder how much it will play a role, right? Because um, Damon Jackson did look decent in his last fight, but I thought that it was a pretty clear 30-27, right? Shepe Mariscal. And, you know, reach is the same. Height, I thought that they looked really close in height in the weigh-ins. I wanted to do this prediction video just after the weigh-ins because I wanted to see how people looked in shape, or if they didn't look in shape. I wanted to see also especially how Stipe looked, and that's why a little bit of us reassurance how they looked on the weights on the scales. How he looked there is kind of why it was like a certainty for me. It was just that extra bit that made me go with Stipe, but that's besides the point. I think that Jim Miller is also going to get a first round KO. Now, this one could backfire, right? He is a underdog, and I do think that Jim Miller. I do see why people think that Jim Miller um, is an underdog because against Bobby Green, he got pieced up and he clearly lost that fight. He got bloodied and bruised up. But if you look back at the first round, right, in that fight, it was like, okay, it was a close first round, but he hit Bobby Green with, I can't remember if it was a drop or a rock, but either way, he hit Bobby Green with a punch that made him go a little jelly leg, and it was it was kind of like now looking back, sort of performance. Like Bobby Green is a really good boxer for the weight class, and it was sort of a looking back, like, huh, actually, wait, this is Damon Jackson we're talking about here. Damon Jackson's good and all, I get that. He's a decent unranked featherweight. He really is. He's definitely like a top 30 to me. It says 31 here, but he's like a top 30, you know? And don't get me wrong there. Like he's a more fundamental striker, I believe. Like a boxer especially. But I mean, I just see openings that Dan Ige found for Jim Miller, and with all the times Damon has been KO'd, I think that the chin will be softened quicker. So, with that being said, you know, like ultimately, Bobby Green is not Damon Jackson. I know, like, shocker, right? Whoa, he's not Damon Jackson, but it's true. It's like he was actually ranked. I don't think Damon Jackson was ever ranked. And I know that rankings don't mean anything. That's just rhetoric, right? That's I mean like Max Holloway was ranked number 9 in the rankings. So the rankings is just kind of it's just a number really. But if you actually look like at the scales fundamentally with the boxing, like Bobby Green has reached higher limits than Damon Jackson could in the boxing against better opposition. Like he went up against Dustin Poirier and actually like okay sure he got KO'd but like when's Damon Jackson you know actually doing decent against like the highest level boxer is like Ilia Topuria squashed him in that one. He just bopped his head when he dropped him when he went down, right? And it was unnecessary extra follow up shots, but you know Bobby Green actually like he first of all he fights with his hands down really, so he was kind of making it easier for Dustin Poirier, and second of all he was actually doing decent in that round before he got KO'd. I understand that he was like taunting and he was like, you know, with his hands down and all that, and he was kind of playing it unsafe. But I mean, I say all this to say my point is, it's just different. Bobby Green had more success with higher levels. Rafael Fiziev, the Dustin Poirier wasn't a great example. He did get KO'd, similar to Ilia Topuria, but he did better. But that's not my point. We look at, well, that is my point, but it wasn't the best example. Rafael Fiziev and Drew Dober are better examples. These guys are more higher level than certain guys that Damon Jackson has lost to or won to. Split decision to Anthony Hernandez is not looking great. So, first round KO, Jim Miller. Now we have Chris Eidman. Hey, I mean, credit to MMA Joey. It's true. He's Chris Eidman, not Weidman. The eye pokes are insane from him. I'm actually surprised how close this is, and I'm in shock that Eric Anders is a slight, ever so slight favorite here. He's just 115 to 105. Like, I think Eidman. I'm just used to it now. I'm just calling him Chris Eidman on the regular. Yeah, Chris Eidman. That's what he's gonna be known as. Um, his boxing looked crazy good, honestly, in Bruno Silva fight. In the Bruno Silva fight. I understand it's Bruno Silva, but for the opposition, which I feel is similar to Eric Anders at this point, looked pretty good. The fact that he was piecing up a guy who, with his hands, was doing okay against Alex Pereira in Bruno Silva, it just tells me that Chris Eidman, and if he wants to, he can use the eye pokes, but it tells me that Eric Anders won't be able to get anything off in the striking. He could try and take him down. I think he won the Jamie Pickett fight. Eric Anders won the Jamie Pickett fight with the grappling, so he could try that. But I don't see how he takes down Chris Weidman. And if he does, I don't see how he keeps him down, right? The only thing is, has his takedown defense gotten worse, similar to Wonder Boy, where, he's 40 years old, he might be just kind of, the age might be getting to him. That's the only thing with Chris Weidman. Chris Eidman, I should say, Like that's his new name. That's his nickname. And ultimately, I'm gonna go with a decision here. I feel like that's what it should be for most people. I think it should be 60-40 more like. These odds are little, and especially with the UFC fans, the typology fans, I should say, it's quite a surprise to see how close it is. I honestly think that Chris Eidman he can eye poke wherever he wants. He can cheat wherever he wants. I think that this one is going to be a pretty clear Chris Eidman. And another one for the eye pokers. Weidman decision. Now this one's interesting. I have gone so back and forth in this one, and I'm actually surprised that Jonathan Martinez is the slight underdog right now as well. I'm surprised, genuinely. I thought that he was the slight favorite on the UFC website, but maybe that was like a while ago, maybe a week ago. Um, yeah, I mean, Marcus McGee, ultimately, Jose Aldo has fundamentally with the boxing, I know that Jose Aldo likes to mix it up, but his takedown, he mixed it up with the takedown, but the takedown and the kicks and all the rest of it for Jose Aldo, all that stuff was um that was usually in his more recent fights kind of like to the side. That was more like a second resource option. It was mostly his boxing, and you see that against Mario Bautista, right? Against Mario Bautista, the only strikes that really landed for Jose Aldo, and Jose Aldo won that fight, let's be honest, but that's besides the point. Jose Aldo, the only strikes that landed worth from the hands were from the boxing. And with Marcus McGee, he has the style to do what Jose Aldo did. It's just a matter of does he have the leg kick defense of Jose Aldo? And I don't think so, but it could be just enough because Jose Aldo won a clear 30-27. Jonathan Martinez kept it decently competitive, but he wasn't throwing as much as I'd like him to in that fight. Now, I don't actually like. I know that they're both 5'8", but I just kind of looking at Jonathan Martinez, knowing that he's much more of a kickboxing sort of style, that he likes to throw kicks a lot, and that he likes the kicks. I mean the clinch striking. I thought that he would be slightly taller than Marcus McGee, but going back to this, the stats and the weigh-ins, right? I was surprised to see that they were actually the same in the height department, and that the leading reach is only by half-inch from Jonathan Martinez. So that is going to be quite worrisome for if you're going to pick Martinez. Now, this one is much more justified by the Tapology fans picking 53 to 47%, because honestly, even I still am not 100% sure with this pick, you know? Like, Gaston Bolaños, I understand 7-3 doesn't look that great on paper, but if you look back at his last performance, just a week ago, Gaston Bolaños did great, and he actually won like a pretty clear decision, you know? And JP Buys, like, these guys aren't great, you know? But the boxing style from Marcus McGee is so crisp that he might just have the style to do it. But ultimately, Jonathan Martinez's kicks are too much, and it's going to be a decision. Now, could he get a TKO? With the boxing style of Marcus McGee, it could happen. However, I think that people know Jonathan Martinez's game now, so they're going to prepare for it, the camp of Marcus McGee, and they're going to do just enough to not get TKO'd by the leg kicks. But ultimately, he is one of the best leg kickers. He is top 5 right now, Jonathan Martinez. It's just that he went up against Jose Aldo, who's freaking sick at defending leg kicks. So it's going to be a decision for Jonathan Martinez. Marcio Rufi. I hope that it's correct. I hope it's Marcio. Marcio. I'll just say Marcio. Marcio Rufi. Now, Marcio Rufi, right, is fighting James Lyontop. Lyontop. Now, this one has the difficult names again. Marcio Rufi, James Lyontop. These guys, okay, another mismatch. I don't know why David Onama and Marcio Rufi are fighting these guys, right? Now, this one's going to be a second round TKO for Marcio Rufi. Now, ultimately, everybody is picking Rufi, okay? Even more so than these other huge favorites like David Onama, okay? Now, this one is supposed to show off the next Conor McGregor, right? The old McGregor, the prime McGregor, the featherweight McGregor. This is the 2.0 of that, you know? He went for a scissor sweep against Jamie Mullarkey. That's what everybody has been talking about. But that's not actually what is actually going to get him the win here. Yes, his creativity is awesome, and it's definitely something that will probably help here. But, I mean, you know, he did miss weight, Lontop, and he is the younger guy, right? He does have 2 L's, and, you know, he didn't look very impressive in those, but, I mean, I do think that he can withstand the first round, because Marcio Rufi, okay, though he is really good, I do think, you know, the Weasel said this, and I think that this is quite true. I do think that Marcio Rufi doesn't quite have the one-punch knockout power, or even the power that McGregor had at featherweight. Featherweight McGregor didn't quite have one-punch power all the time, but it was crazy how much he would just hit people with one punch and they would just go down, you know? Sometimes he would combo people like Chad Mendes. You know, it was a lot of body shots. It was investment shots. But against Lontop, you know, it is probably going to be like a Chad Mendes type of thing where, you know, he does have some investment shots. He does kind of punish head, body, legs. He kind of mixes it all together. He is kind of a free-flowing guy like McGregor. So I do think that he's going to, you know, he's going to try some creative stuff. He's going to try some knees. He's probably going to try some sort of creative takedown, maybe just to show off to the fans, you know, show the New York fans, the Madison Square Garden fans, why he is a prospect to look out, to be looked for, to be, I guess, praised in the future and to get a huge opponent in the future, because ultimately he's supposed to be set up as the next sort of Conor McGregor lookalike. He's got the style, he's got the look, all that. And he wants to look favorable to the fans of New York. He wants Dana White, the boss, you know, all them to be sort of appreciating his fan friendly style. So he's gonna sort of piece him up, but the weight advantage goes to Long Top, and I think that he's gonna, you know, although he's gonna be kind of like a punching bag, I do think that he's going to, that little extra weight is going to make him a little bit more harder to put away. So ultimately, I think it's going to be a round 2. And we move on. Wow, this is a freaking trash card. I mean, I know everybody's been saying that, but I mean, it just has to be said, you know, especially with Nikita Krylov and Mirzakhanov gone. And yeah, I mean, not much to be said here. Like, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just not interested in this fight. Most people aren't either. I know that, it's the popular thing to hate on women's fights these days, but this is just how it is. They're not that entertaining. They don't have that many knockouts or submissions. They're the lowest. They're even lower than the heavyweights outside the rankings, I believe, and the flyweights. Correct me if I'm wrong there in the comments. Make sure to do so if I am wrong there. But I believe that they do have the most decisions, and that is quite pathetic. But ultimately, it's going to be another one, another decision, right? The prospect, the younger one. I mean, 37 to 30. This is like, I mean, this isn't even like a old vet sort of situation where it's like, oh, maybe she could pull it off. I mean, ultimately, she's just gonna try to pressure Karine Silva. I'm talking about Vivian Araujo. She's just gonna try to pressure her, similar to Natalia Silva. She's gonna try and pressure and try to get the big meaty hooks. I'm throwing big meaty hooks, pretty much. Maybe some kicks, throwing a little bit of variety. She's gonna try a little bit mixing it up, but I don't think that she's quite that old veteran. I mean, like Stipe or any of these guys, the like the heavyweights or anyone that can actually utilize their sort of veteran status. I don't think she's going to be able to use her veteran status. I don't think so because if you look at her record, right, 12-6. 18-4. Karine Silva is the veteran here. She's younger, yet she's the veteran here. It's 18-4 to 12-6. Explain how. I mean, listen. If you're picking Araujo, this could happen. I'm not gonna say that this is impossible. I mean, the odds agree with me here. It's not like it's impossible. It's minus 300. She should be a moderate favorite. I agree here, but explain to me how Vivian Araujo actually can get this done. Really, she's pretty much just a older, slower, like less technical version of Karine Silva, in my opinion. Like she's not like special Karine Silva, but most women's MMA fighters aren't. Let's be honest. I mean, they're mostly just like decent everywhere for a women's MMA fighter. So ultimately, she's taller, rangier. I mean, I know the reach says 68 for Viviana Araujo, but she never really uses it. She's mostly a compact boxer, at least as of late. She's been like trying to get a little gritty ditty boxing, as Yoel Romero would say, um, with her opponents, right? Especially with Natalia Silva, right? That was the one where she was usually sort of using that marauding style. Lots of Lucas Tracy references here, but yeah, I mean, I think that she's just kind of a little bit better everywhere. So, Karine Silva, so maybe 30-27, probably more likely 29-28, I think. Moving up. Now, this one is interesting, okay? He should not be a 1350 favorite. What is happening? Why is Bo Nickel a 1350 favorite? Bo Nickel is good, but he's 6-0, okay? He is 6-0 and I think that, Paul Craig has a really good chance if Bo Nickel doesn't have the fight IQ. If he does have the fight IQ, he will not engage in the grappling at all, okay? Because Bo Nickel should be a little crispier on the feet. We saw against Val Woodburn that he took him out in like a minute, okay? Paul Craig, he has the body kicks, and he could be faster because both of these guys aren't that fast, let's be honest. They're not that fast twitch. Bo Nickel's just insanely skilled on the ground. But getting there, he had to nutshot Jamie Pickett. People forget about that. People forget, man. And he had to, take Cody Brundage to the second round. Like he's been a little iffy. Now I understand that he aside from the fact that he took Cody Brundage to the second round and Jamie Pickett was right, nut shotted to get to the ground. Aside from that, he did dominate them, but he's 6-0, right? Paul Craig submitted some of the best light heavyweights. So I mean, Andre Muniz, he's quite good as well in the weight class. I mean, he's not special, right? Like, but he's like a just top 20 guy, and he kind of just decimated him with the ground and pound. So, I mean, this ultimately comes down to will Bo Nickel have the fight IQ to not engage in the ground and be a dummy and get locked up in submissions galore? I don't think he will get locked up in the submissions, but I do think that he'll actually finish Craig with ground and pound. I think that he'll rock Craig too much to where he won't be able to lock anything up on the ground. I'm going to go with a round 2 TKO. Now, people are picking round 1, and they're saying that it's going to get done on the feet. I do think that ultimately it will happen on the feet, but I think he'll follow up with like 3 ground and pound shots that will ultimately daze Craig enough for the ref to stop it. Ultimately, it's the fight IQ, okay? This is a big step up, right? Cody Brundage is ass. All these guys that he fought in the past were ass. It's just, it's the only real competition that he's faced lately is Paul Craig. That's the only one. So, ultimately, it's skill versus it's 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 the IQ versus the skill. We know he has the skill, but can he manage the IQ? Can he be patient? Can he not get too reckless? Okay, because it's these young up and comers like Bo Nickel, Edmund Shabazian, right? He was looked at as the same guy. He had the gold hair. He was undefeated. He looked insane, right? He had decent striking, decent grappling. But then he kind of gassed against Derek Brunson, and Derek Brunson took over, and he just kind of decimated him, made him a bloody mess, and now he's never really been the same. He's had a couple wins here and there. He's had like 2, I believe, since then. But yeah, I think that this is make or break for Nickel. Will he be the young up and comer, not ready for the top of the division? Will he be exposed by the veteran, or will he shine? I think he will, but not without a slight bit of adversity to the body, because Nickel's body hasn't really been tested too much, and his body doesn't look that impressive, especially in the weigh-ins. Usually he's looked like that, but his abs aren't really that impressive. So I think that he could be tested to the body, but I don't know if Craig will be the one to do it. His kicks are great, but I don't know, man. Moving on. Michael Chandler versus Charles do Bronx. A big champion. Charles do Bronx. I'm going with a round 1 sub. Now, don't get me wrong here. This could go to the 4th round, and it could be a bloody war. It could be insane. Chandler's talking about 2.0. He's talking about, like, I do think that these topology percentage and these odds are pretty good. I do think that they make sense, right? Because Charles has been active. He's been fighting. He hasn't gotten knocked out like Chandler. He hasn't gotten, he has gotten knocked out, not like TKO'd, right? But he hasn't gotten, like Charles Oliveira slept him in their fight. Against Dustin Poirier. He got submitted. People are forgetting about this. Why is nobody talking about this in the lead up to this? He got rear naked choked by Dustin Poirier. Now, I understand that he's a big, compact ball of muscle, and he understands that if he gets taken down and controlled on the back, that it's going to be dangerous, so he's going to do anything that he can to survive that. I get that fully. However, I mean, even if he survives that, like, first of all, I want to address that point. Like, he's a big, compact ball of muscle, so he could explode out of it. Like, Joe Rogan was like, whoa, what an explosion, in their first fight. He sort of escaped that, the Charles Oliveira attack from the back just by, exploding from the back to just sort of twist around and end up on top. But I mean, this is a better Charles Oliveira than when he fought back in 2021. And also, we got to take into consideration that even though, yes, he exploded in that situation, that was like probably like a 1 out of 10, maybe 2, 3 out of 10 scenario. Like, Charles Oliveira would probably, if he was, if he had the grip right in that scenario, if he had the hands, if he was able to hold Chandler a little tighter there, if he had the triangle tighter, the body triangle, or if Chandler didn't go for the slam, Oliveira, I know that these are what ifs. This is like some situations that doesn't really, they didn't happen. But if it didn't happen like that, I know this is crazy to say. Oh, if like Robert Whitaker said, if I had wheels, I'd be a bike. But it is it is like that. If Oliveira hadn't if Chandler hadn't exploded like that to twist around, like Oliveira probably would have had his back for the rest of the round, and Chandler would have had to ride it out. Um, you look at how he subbed Dustin Poirier. I understand this is MMA math, but he got the back of Poirier. Poirier got the back of Chandler, right? And ultimately, it's like even if he escapes the greatest submission artist from any attacks that Charles Oliveira brings with his brilliant BJJ, he's a nuisance on the feet as well. Like people forget. People forget, man. I know that's overused at this point, but people forget, man. Charles Oliveira knocked out Chandler, right? That's how he won. So ultimately, even if it comes to the feet, I do think that he can win on that department. But I think what's going to happen this time is it's going to be similar to the Gaethje fight. He drops Chandler, similar to how the second round went. However, he's going to follow him up onto the ground this time because Chandler is going to still be with it enough in the head to sort of get up, but Charles is going to take the back or some other form of jiu-jitsu is going to be done here, and he's going to probably get either a triangle or a rear naked choke, one of the sort that are quite common amongst Charles Oliveira's submission wins. So a submission in the first round for Charles, the only sub I'm going with on this card, and Stipe is going to KO John Jones. I am calling it, and I'm going to say it happens in round 3. Now, how will this happen? This is a question that you've all been wondering. I'm going with the upset. Now, ultimately, right, I'm Croatian. I'm rooting for the Croatian Chad. As you know, I gotta root for Stipe Miocic, right? I gotta root for him, okay? But that's not even why I'm picking him. Most people are gonna say, let me know in the comments if you think this is biased. It's not biased, okay? I genuinely think that he has the style, okay? If this was Tom Aspinall, I would pick Aspinall against Miocic, okay? I'm not that biased. But I genuinely think that John Duck Jones doesn't have the style unless, okay, Stipe's back defense isn't good at all. Stipe, because, John Jones could shoot immediately, and then Stipe just doesn't have the good, he hasn't experienced jiu-jitsu, or a guy off his back or whatever. Or he hasn't experienced the kickboxing on the back foot that John Jones brings. But I don't think, I've heard all the arguments. I've heard MMA Che, I've heard MMA Guru, I've heard MMA Joey, I've heard The Weasel, I've heard Tracy, Lucas Tracy, I've heard them all. I've heard Bedtime MMA. Everybody's picking John Jones. And it just feels like I'd feel silly to not pick Miocic here. I'd feel stupid, right? Because this is one of those Sean Strickland ones against Israel Adesanya where if I don't pick him, I just feel like, oh man, what if I picked him? I feel so stupid, but that's not why I'm picking him. Again, this is rhetoric. This isn't points to why he'd win. So let's get into that, okay? John Jones, as we all know, if you've watched any of these hardcore MMA fans, especially MMA Che, you'd know that the boxing is the problem for Miocic. Jones. John Duck Jones. Miocic, yeah, that's actually kind of true. Boxing has been a bit of an issue for him, but these are against hard hitters like Daniel Cormier, like especially Francis Ngannou, and John Duck Jones, I should say. John Duck Jones doesn't have that power. Let's just be honest. He's KO'd Lyoto, dropped Lyoto Machida, I should say, but that was it. And Daniel Cormier in the second fight, that was on PADs or EPO or picograms, whatever it was. He was on the sauce. And John Jones, he doesn't fight someone on the same height, same reach, almost, okay? Not quite, but almost, usually. And he's going to try the eye pokes. We know that. But Stipe's dealt with it before with Daniel Cormier. He's used to it, okay? 37, 42-year-old. I understand that Stipe's probably very out of his prime. I get that. But even out of prime, Stipe, I think, has the style, right? I do think that he has fast twitch boxing. We look at Stipe versus Cormier 3. I understand this is older Cormier, but that was like a year after his second fight, and people were saying, oh, that's prime Cormier. And, Stipe looked so fast in that fight. He dropped him in the second round. I'm talking about Cormier. He dropped Cormier. And when has John Jones done that? Like, with the hands, he is going to either do one of two things, I think, in the first round. He's going to immediately try to play the kickboxing game. He's going to try to go on the back foot, but I don't think that's what he's going to do, actually. I think that's the second most likely, or that's going to be what he does if Stipe stuffs the takedown from what I think is the first and most likely choice that he does. I think that John Duck Jones is going to immediately shoot. He's gonna try. He's gonna do what Hamza Chimaev did against Kevin Holland, I think. Although I think Miocic will survive and he'll scramble out of it. I think that John Jones will win the first and probably the second, but I don't think that John Jones is accustomed to the weight class. I understand that he is less pounds than he was in his last fight against Cyril Gane. He is less pounds than Miocic right now, and he is going to be lighter, I think. However, and he's going to move lighter. However, I understand it's Cyril Gane, but if you look at his boxing, his kicks looked great against Cyril Gane, I'll be honest. His kicks looked fast twitch, but his boxing, like, he tried to throw a big midi hook to the body against Cyril Gane, and it was like 3 seconds off. I'm exaggerating, but it was insane how far he was from the target. And I guess Cyril Gane was giving him too much, was giving him so much respect that he didn't want to engage too much in the boxing. But he could have at least he could have thrown and capitalized on that whiff. But I mean, he doesn't have the power, so But you get my point. He could have landed a jab or a right hook, or he could have tried, right? Cyril Gane could have tried more, but he would have lost. Like, let's be honest, he probably wouldn't have won. He probably would have got taken down, ground and pounded, or submitted if he wasn't submitted with the guillotine. But ultimately, we saw how Stipe did against Daniel Cormier. I think Daniel Cormier has a worse ground style for John Jones, and I think that he's gonna fare similarly to Stipe. Stipe will conserve his gas tank. He has gone 5 rounds a lot lately. Meanwhile, he went to the fourth round in the second fight with Daniel Cormier. He went to the full 5 rounds against Daniel in the third fight, and ultimately, John Jones hasn't gone 5 rounds in a longer period of time. John Jones, his last fight that went 5 rounds was Dominic Reyes. That was 2019, I believe. 2019. Okay, and he lost that fight. That is a pretty similar style to Stipe Miocic. And we've seen. I understand we've seen him be quite passive in the early rounds. We've seen him sort of play on the back foot against Fabricio Verdum, right? These other guys. And I mean, like. I guess I understand that this is Francis Ngannou now folded him like a lawn chair, but we've seen against Daniel Cormier, Francis Ngannou, he's shown that he has some of the most quality wrestling in the division. It's just a matter of, can he survive John Jones's? Because we know that he's just a little bit better in that department. And we know that John Jones is just a little bit better in every department except the striking, particularly in the boxing. And I think that Stipe, no striker that John Jones has fought, especially now that he's slower and older, has the speed and power and combos and the heavyweight power we're talking about here, like Stipe, quite like him. I know you're gonna say, Dominic Reyes and Thiago Santos, they had really close fights, and it's yes, but Thiago Santos, John Jones gave him a lot of respect. It is kind of true. I understand this is rhetoric, and I've used that a lot in this video, but it is rhetoric that John Jones fights his competition, but there is some truth to that. And I think that he will fight his competition here, kind of. And he's he's using all this stuff. Stipe said this about my family and that. That's bullshit, right? Let's just say it how it is. That's bullshit. Stipe is nothing but nice, and he's using this to sort of gain motivation. But there's no motivation to be had here. There's John Jones is putting all these smiles on. MMA Joey's saying that he's all smiles, he's not affected. I think it's the opposite. I think that those smiles and the fact that he's smiling to the crowd chanting Tommy, Tommy, I think this is really getting to him. I genuinely do. Nobody else is picking Stipe here, and nobody and people might say, oh, like even the people who are picking, John Jones, they might say, oh well, it's getting to him, it's getting to him, but they won't have the guts to pick Stipe. I think that Stipe, right, his boxing is super underrated. It's super underrated. And the power, even on the back foot, like he could land an uppercut on John Jones on the back foot and it'll KO him. Like Stipe's uppercuts are super underrated. Like people are talking about his right hand. Oh, catch him with a right hand. As old man Tracy, big meaty hooks Tracy would say. Tracy's the goat. Tracy's the goat. I gotta say, he's the goat of the quotes. But yeah, I'm going with Miocic. People think that he just has the right hand. He just has the crafty hooks to the body. He has the uppercuts too. The uppercuts is what's going to help him here. Like I can just picture a Derek Lewis Curtis Blades sort of knockout. I seriously can, but I think it'll be more like a TKO. I think Stipe is going to get it done, and I pray he does. I'm praying for him. It's not a biased pick. I swear. I swear. And I'm gonna feel so good if he gets it. If he doesn't, listen, this is what isn't expected to happen. John Jones is expected to go out there and run through Stipe. So even if Stipe looks good, it's a win in my book. Even if he just looks all right, even if he doesn't win, because he's old man Stipe. Old man Stipe. I don't mean to disrespect Miocic like that. He's the goat. Stipe is also the goat. Tracy's the old man YouTube MMA goat, but Stipe Miocic is the real goat, the MMA goat. He is the Croatian sensation. He's going to get it done, okay? He's going to get it done. He's either going to land a right hook on the back foot, or he's going to land an uppercut while Jones is coming in with a predictable takedown in the third round as he's getting a little tired or slower or sloppier on the takedown entries. I'm telling you, he's not going to be like Dominic Reyes. Stipe. He's not going to be like Dominic Reyes where he just blows his gas tank in the first 3 rounds. I think Stipe is going to be conservative, and if he finds the shot in the first round, listen, he might get aggressive in the first round. But whether it's to his detriment or not, I think that he will have the cardio, going out for so long, being out for so long, out of competition, doing other things, getting his mind out of this might have actually helped him, in my opinion. I think that he sort of needed to sort of take a look at all else and be like, yeah, this one is my last one possibly. I need to put my all into this. And ultimately it comes down to people say, oh, MMA or fighting is 90% or 80% mental. I don't really agree with that, but there is some truth to that, and I think Stipe might actually have the slight edge to that. Like Stipe has no pressure going into this, really. Like, he's not been talked to on social media. He has much less interview obligations. Everybody's talking about Tom Aspinall, and everybody's saying that John Jones is ducking him. So, even though I don't agree that the mentality is 80% or 90%, that is a big factor. I think Stipe definitely has the mental edge, and I think that whether it be the first round, he gets aggressive, or the third round, he's patient. Ultimately, I think that his hands are just going to be too much for John. And I don't think that the kicks are going to play too much dividends for John Jones, especially since Stipe hasn't really shown too much hurt to the body in the past. Now, people haven't tested Stipe's body, mind you, but not really. But, I mean, hey, he hasn't shown it. He hasn't shown much weakness to the body, so, I mean, we'll see. Listen, there's a lot of unknowns to coming into this, and it's actually an interesting fight. It's actually kind of 50-50. I do think that John Jones should be the favorite, but I'm going with the underdog because I trust that the inactivity will actually not be Stipe's downfall. I don't think it will. I do think that Miocic, being the active guy, having a submission, a win against Cyril Gane, not getting KO'd by Francis Ngannou, right? I do think that that is a reason to make Jones the favorite, and a pretty decent one at that. But the favorite being 650 is just disrespectful. So those are my predictions. The Croatian sensation will get it done. Stipe Miocic becomes the champion. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. I didn't predict Paul Tyson on Typology, and I didn't predict it for a video, but Jake Paul by third round KO as well. Have a good one.